Well, Jordan Addison was arrested again, so now what? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network. Today on the show, the first topic is going to be about Jordan Addison's arrest in Tampa, Florida on Tuesday morning, 4 a.m.-ish, and the consequences that are going to come from that in the context of everything else that Jordan Addison has done over his time as a Minnesota Viking, and how those things have been handled. There's also a lot more news than that. Mike Pettin retired. We'll discuss that a little bit. And the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin parted ways, which leaves a pretty juicy opening for Brian Flores, and it's worth discussing the merits of that. Plus, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah both took the podium on Tuesday, right after this news about Jordan Addison's arrest broke, and had to answer questions about a whole number of things, including that, but also J.J. McCarthy, how the season went belly up, and so much more. So there's a lot to talk about, but I do want to carve out the time to treat any off-field story with the care and nuance that it deserves. So let's start with the facts of the case with Jordan Addison. Thank you to Andrew Kramer of the Star Tribune for compiling all of this and putting it all together in a nice, easy to digest way. But the facts of the case is that the Seminole Indian Police arrested Jordan Addison at 3:46 a.m. on Monday, January 12th, at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, Hard Rock Casino in Tampa, Florida. He was released in the afternoon after posting a $500 cash bond. Addison's agent and legal team have kind of gone to bat for him. His agent posted a statement on social media. I will just read it out. That says, on Jordan's behalf, his legal team has already initiated the investigation, identified witnesses, and we are reviewing the viability of a claim for false arrest. He looks forward to the legal process, and upon full investigation, we are confident Mr. Addison will be exonerated. There aren't a lot of details beyond that from the police department that arrested him. So that's kind of all we have to go on for now. When O'Connell and Kwesi were asked about this, they both said, we kind of just learned about this 10 seconds ago. We don't really have a lot to say. We don't know any of the details, which is a smart way to go about that. There's the facts of the case for you. Trespassing and what was the actual trespassing in an occupied structure or conveyance. That's the actual official legal charge, which just means you were asked to leave and you didn't leave. In a hotel and casino, which I would assume is a 24-hour establishment, that means you were there when you weren't allowed to be there, and that's the charge. It is the most minor charge of all of the things that Jordan Addison has been charged for, or gotten in trouble for, from, reckless driving 150 down the highway, the DUI a couple of years ago. And of course, you probably have to tack on to this in terms of off-field annoyances, missing a walkthrough in London and being held out for a quarter because of it. So I think that the tangible impact of these things is what is most worth discussing. How you feel morally about Jordan Addison is your business. It's not mine. And how I feel morally about it is my business, not yours. Like, we don't need to try to convince each other how to feel about a guy who got a reckless driving charge and a DUI. That's up to you. But in terms of me covering the Vikings, what impact will this have on the Vikings is the central question. And to answer it, we have to look at what the tangible impact was of all of these instances. The reckless driving charge had no tangible impact on the Vikings. There wasn't a suspension from it. There was a suspension from the DUI, which he served this season. He missed the first 3 games. The missed walkthrough, the tangible impact of it was he missed a quarter. So this is affecting his availability. And so the tangible impact for the Vikings and for Jordan Addison in the wake of this instance is now the question. What should it be? And I have a tough time pinning down what the popular opinion is on. I know what mine is, but I don't really have a great sense for what people think should happen here, because most of the discussion that I have seen around this is pretty vague. It's finger wagging. It's shame on you. And, you shouldn't have done that. And I'm sick of this guy and I'm done with this guy. But it doesn't really ever spin into what should happen. I haven't seen anybody say they got to get rid of Jordan Addison. I've seen people say, well, maybe they're more likely to trade him or whatever, but that's a transactional thing that has to do with draft capital. Like, are they going to trade him for a lower draft pick now? That doesn't really feel like it punishes Jordan Addison at all. It just punishes the Vikings. So that conversation quickly logically falls apart to me. And I don't really know where to go with it. So I ask you, dear listener, if you are watching on YouTube, or if you're not and you want to go over to YouTube real quick and leave a comment, tell me what you think should happen. What should the Vikings do? What should the league do? I genuinely don't really know what's out there. So if you could help me out with what you think, I would love to hear it. One answer I don't think I'm going to get a lot is nothing. What if the team does nothing? Inarguably, that is the best thing for the on-field Minnesota Vikings. If Jordan Addison is just on the field as much as he possibly can be, and the team does nothing, that is going to be better than suspending him for 2 quarters or something like that. But how would you feel if the Vikings came to the podium next time and said, yeah, we had a talk with him and we're satisfied with that, and that's going to be the end of it? We gave him a slap on the wrist. How would you feel about that? And if you wouldn't like it, why wouldn't you like it? I really am trying to get real answers. I'm genuinely asking. That's not a rhetorical question. For me, I ask, what would the punishment be for being nothing? What is the downside to doing nothing? And that may sound, again, like a rhetorical question, but let's really interrogate that. What is the downside to doing nothing about a player who gets in minor trouble every so often? This is minor trouble. This ain't major trouble. This is not a shooting spree in a park. This is a series of misdemeanors. Could also be described as a series of tickets. If they do nothing, it maybe looks like they're weak, they're soft on crime, like there's too much amnesty and forgiveness and everybody can get away with doing everything they want. Are you worried that it will lead to more instances of off-field trouble? And to that, I would ask, why is the team, why is this American citizen's employer the one who is to be held responsible for their legal behavior? That feels like a weird dynamic socially to me. And probably not something we would normally expect in any other system. And hey, there are places where, the legal system comes up short. And so we do look to the NFL to kind of be the dispensers of justice. But the NFL and the Minnesota Vikings are not a government agency beholden to anyone's constitution. They are a private company that will do ultimately what is best for them. And whether that means best for their bottom line or best for their on-field production or whatever you want to say, that is what they will do. Their motivations are different than a court's. And so we shouldn't really expect them to behave like a court. All in all, for me, because of the nature of these instances, these aren't crimes that I feel require stern, dark moral arbitration, like some of the other stuff that we may see in the league from time to time, instances of domestic violence, for example. That is a much different thing, and I think the NFL and Minnesota Vikings have a different responsibility when it comes to violent crimes than trespassing tickets. There has to be a difference in the way that we see those. And so I don't say this to dismiss anyone's frustration about this being the 4th time in his time as a Viking that he's been in trouble. Absolutely not dismissing your frustration about that. And please don't mistake me for doing so, but rather to take it to the next logical follow-up question, which is, okay, now what? What should they do? I would like to hear it. I would like to hear what you think needs to be done and what you think happens if that isn't done. What problem are you trying to prevent? But for me, I don't think the Vikings are going to cut off their nose to spite their face. I don't think they're going to turn around and flip him for a third-round pick just to be rid of the problem guy. Doesn't sound like he's a locker room cancer. It doesn't sound like this is a problem that really bothers anybody internally except for, O'Connell and Kwesi and Keenan McCardell, the people that are directly work with him all the time. But I don't know how much Blake Cashman cares about this or how it's going to affect chemistry between him and JJ McCarthy. I don't think that's really at issue. And Kevin O'Connell did make a point to say he's been a great teammate. Kwesi said something about, you're this guy 99% of the time and the other guy 1% of the time. And I think that that's important. It sounds like they're going to mostly be supportive of him. But it does potentially play into the fifth-year option conversation, which we can have at a possibly less heated time. For now, we will move on to some of the coaching news and the rest of the kind of observations that I had off of the pressers from Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell. So that'll all be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gusto. If you start a small business, of course you do it for the joy of trolling through payroll benefit spreadsheets, right? That's what we're all in it for? No, of course not. We want to take the stress out of all of those things, and that is where Gusto comes in. You can get help with payroll, benefits, and HR in an all-in-one remote-friendly platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or just trying to get everybody paid, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle and no hidden fees. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save hours every week. And if you ever have a snag, you can reach an HR expert anytime. And you can have that peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that is gusto.com/lockedonnfl.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you like listening to Locked On Vikings every day and you want to do so ad-free, you can with the Locked On Everydayer Club. Interruption-free Locked On Vikings episodes for $5 a month or $50 a year. It helps me out. It helps the network out. And you get to listen to Locked On Vikings with no ads, plus special access to a Discord server and more. Let's move on. One of the first things that Kevin O'Connell said when he came to the podium was to announce to everybody that Mike Pettine would be retiring this year. Mike Pettine is something of a forgotten member of the Vikings brain trust, but he was assistant head coach, and he was a very important informant, I think, in the I would say he was probably in the room when a lot of the biggest decisions got made, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The Vikings didn't run anything close to the Mike Pettine defense, the one that got him fired from Green Bay and Cleveland and etc. But as somebody with a lot of experience and former head coaching experience, he was, to me, kind of the Ryan Grigson of the coaching staff, where nobody wants this guy pulling the levers because of reasons you can Google, but there is something to having somebody who did the job before and failed in your ear saying, so here's what happened when I tried that. And you can hopefully mitigate the factors of inexperience that are going to come with having a first-time GM that's very young and a first-time head coach that's very young. It seems like that was a very purposeful structure to have guys in the room that knew what they were doing. And Ryan Grigson is a different one. Well, both these guys are different too, because they had prior relationships with the people they are assisting. Ryan Grigson knew Kwesi from way back from their experiences together in scouting departments, and Mike Pettin and Kevin O'Connell knew each other from those Cleveland Browns teams. Kevin O'Connell was the quarterbacks coach at the time, actually coached Josh McCown there, the 2015 Browns. Interesting precursor to the 2025 Vikings. Do you think that's happening somewhere right now? Do you think that, like, if we looked at like the Titans right now and we're going to see like the future GM of the Vikings and the future head coach of the Vikings, that's like a QC coach right now and it's some random scout, who knows? But there's not a lot to mention about Mike Pettin because it's not really clear what he did or didn't have a hand in, but I would venture a guess that it was a lot, that O'Connell was leaning on him for advice quite a lot and guidance in these things, no final decisions or whatever, but a voice in the room. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. There's actually, from the end of Kwesi's presser, there's a really interesting moment where somebody asks, who's going to be in charge of the quarterback decisions? Most of this was about what they thought about JJ McCarthy. They didn't answer directly any of the questions that you wouldn't expect them to answer directly. Like, do you want him to be the guy in 2026? And Kevin O'Connell's like, man, like, I can't answer that. Like, he rattled off some dodgy nonsense that's probably going to go really triple platinum because he didn't answer the question. And does that mean he's done really with JJ McCarthy and he's just not telling us? But really what he said was, we want to develop McCarthy, but we're going to do what's best for the team at the end of the day. They definitely do have hopes for McCarthy to develop. There is not a world where they're going to like trade this dude away. That is clearly not on the table based on these press conferences. And it wasn't like an emphatic denial of those things. It's just that a lot of their answers to these questions were about, well, here's how we evaluated this year. The fact that McCarthy did better at the end of the season mattered a lot to them. And they basically told him, hey, work on this, and that in the offseason, and now we're not allowed to talk to you, so we'll see you in May. That is that. But what was really interesting to me was at the end of the press conference with Kwesi, when they asked him who's going to be in charge of quarterback decisions. And Kwesi kind of said, if you're asking that at any point, you've already failed. Because if you're asking who has the power to do the thing, it means everybody's misaligned. It means that everybody has their own idea of what should happen. And now it's a matter of who has the power to actualize it. That's a bad structure, right? That's a bad dynamic. That's not going to make everybody happy. But rather, we're all going to be in the room and we're going to put it all together, and you're going to say that, and you're going to say this, and we're going to be collaborative, and we're all going to be respectful of each other. And at the end of it, we're going to come out with a sense of what can work and what can't work, and we're going to have options. And by the way, what you decide to do might not end up being available to you. You might say, well, our best bet is to trade for this quarterback. What if that quarterback is no longer up for trade? What if your best bet is, I like that free agent? What if he signs with someone else, right? So what actually happens might not even be up to anybody in that building. And sometimes that's how it goes. Just look at what happened with Drake May or Anthony Richardson in the draft. But it all circles back into, with someone like Mike Pettin, I wouldn't say that he or Grigson have power, but I would say that they have influence. Those are different things. They don't have exclusive control of any lever, but they were, in Pettin's case, in the ears of the guy who does. So I don't think Mike Pettin needs to be replaced per se. And I'm sure that his phone is still on if Kevin O'Connell really wants to call him. But it does mean that if Brian Flores does leave to be head coach of, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, yikes, that's one option for replacing him that is no longer on the table. I don't think it's an option a lot of people would have been excited about, but it's one that would be considered. In fact, he did interview for the job after the Vikings fired Ed Donatel, if you remember. It won't be Pettin. He's retiring. Go and God bless. Who would it be? It could be Durante Jones, unless he takes a DC job elsewhere too. It could be Mike Saravo. Those two names have been kind of bandied around a little bit. It could be somebody completely off the radar, somebody out of the organization entirely. They could do what, there was a hot take in the mailbag yesterday about how the Vikings should handle this completely abandoning the Flores scheme and saying only that guy could run it. We're not going to try to replicate it. We're just going to go build something else from scratch and not waste our time trying to cook a recipe we don't understand, because only that guy can do it. And I think that that's absolutely an option on the table. We'll go over that next with Tomlin and the ripple effects of Tomlin and how it affects the Vikings. This is not Locked On Steelers, but it does matter a lot to the Vikings. I think that Mike Tomlin stepped down. I'll go over that next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Quo. Because it is the new year, we tend to think about the messier parts of how our businesses run and think there has to be a better way. Right now is the time to try new systems and try to figure out how to streamline communications and organization. And that is why today's episode is brought to you by Quo. It's spelled Quo, and it's the smarter way to run your business communications. When everybody is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Plus, Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. QUO, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and trying to make dinner every day is a big one. It can be a big burden to try to get dinner made every day, but that is where Home Chef can help you out. It takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. Home Chef is rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. These meals come ready to fit your schedule. They're 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Everything arrives pre-portioned, and the recipes are super simple, but they're not boring. They feel elevated with restaurant-quality dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering listeners 50% off of your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. Let me say that again. That is 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life at homechef.com/lockedon. You must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Moving outside the scope of Minnesota for a second, obviously the coaching carousel turns. There are now 9 head coaching vacancies in the NFL. That's a massive number. So this is going to be a very big year for change in the NFL. Most recent one that opened up is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we're very much on Brian Flores watch here on Locked On Vikings. So here is the latest. He has completed his interview with the Baltimore Ravens. He has not officially been requested for any interviews with anybody else. There's been rumors about the Raiders. I've seen a little bit of chatter about the Titans, but nothing too serious. And that's it. Everybody else, it appears he's just off their radar, and a lot of other teams have started to fulfill all of their interviews, and they've requested what they're going to request, and they've gotten through the process of actually conducting a lot of these. So who knows where those teams are? For me, I'm not going to really exhale until 9 head coaches have been hired and none of them are Brian Flores. Until then, I'm going to be worried about it. And the Steelers are an opening that I am extremely worried about. So a detail that is key here to the Steelers and Mike Tomlin's departure is that Mike Tomlin stepped down. He was not fired, and this was not a mutual parting of ways, which is what I thought was going to happen. Instead, he has stepped down and essentially entered his retirement. So the Pittsburgh Steelers still have his rights. His contract is not terminated. So if you were like me and you were daydreaming about a world where, yeah, we lose Brian Flores, but Mike Tomlin's the defensive coordinator in Minnesota again, I thought that would be kind of fun. Unfortunately, you'd have to trade for him. So you have to give the Steelers draft picks for that, and you're not going to outbid a team that wants him as the head coach. So maybe in a little bit, plus all of the journalists around this, all of the scuttlebutt is that Tomlin wants to go into TV. So maybe he'll do that, and you could maybe get like the next kind of Sean Payton situation where he comes out of TV and he says, I want to get back into coaching, and maybe the Vikings have just decided to move on from Kevin O'Connell, whatever year that is, right? Maybe they line up just right. I don't know. Putting that aside, though, the real fear to me is Brian Flores going to Pittsburgh. I think that is perfect. I hate it. Here's why I think it's perfect. For one, a hard-nosed, blitz-happy, hyper-aggressive defense very much fits the ethos that the Steelers have always been trying to build since 20 years before I was born. Two, when it comes to Flores' lawsuit, it's going to be more of a problem for some franchises than others. And Flores has already worked for the Pittsburgh Steelers while this is going on. So they clearly don't have a huge issue on it. And I also think in just the social dynamics of ownership, the Rooneys are very high up the totem pole. And I feel like the reputation, like they're not going to be as worried about their reputation. And they, as a family, they have a history of not being as worried about their reputation amongst other owners as some of the other people in that boys club are. But regardless, it doesn't feel like that's a huge hurdle. And they also don't necessarily have a young quarterback. That's the other concern that teams are going to have with Brian Flores is how things crashed and burned with Tua Tagovailoa. Am I going to expose my young, impressionable quarterback to that and make him the head coach? That's, I think, a stopping point for some teams, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for the Steelers. They could go after a veteran that knows what he's doing. They could also... I'm sure Flores has an answer to these questions too, and that probably is, well, I'm going to hire this guy or that guy and let him do the quarterback and stay out of it, which could be satisfactory to the Steelers as well. I think it just fits really well, and they seem to make a lot of sense for Brian Flores, and they immediately skyrocket to the number one fear team for me, above the team that has already done an interview with Brian Flores, but they've done 12 interviews, and there's a lot of really good candidates on that list. So I am, needless to say, I'm a little bit concerned about Brian Flores becoming the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for Flores, who has concerns, again, about, meddling, unstable ownership, you're probably never going to get a better answer to that than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you're going to get a long leash, and you can build the team in whatever image you want because the Steelers are headed into a rebuild. I actually just talked about this on Locked On NFL. The Steelers are headed into a rebuild. They've got a lot of old players. They have a lot of people. They've got some young talent like Joey Porter Jr., but they've got a lot of players that are going to have to be replaced in the next couple of years, whether you like it or not. And Flores could not only make that defense in the image of this cool thing that he has created here, but he can also decide what kind of quarterback team they're going to be. Are they going to be a team that drafts a quarterback high and then tries to develop them? Or are they going to be a team that tries to get, the second stint QB that blows up and does great, like what maybe Seattle's doing with Sam Darnold, or what the Saints did with Drew Brees back in the day? Are they going to try to be that kind of team? You get to make all of those choices. And unlike other situations where, hey, this roster is falling apart and you're going to have to, like Atlanta or the Raiders, you're going to get the time to do the rebuild that you want to do. So I'm worried about that. Obviously, there is, if Flores does leave, then who becomes the defensive coordinator becomes the next exact central question. But I also want to mention that when it comes to the rest of the staff, Kevin O'Connell was asked about this and very much was like, we haven't made any decisions yet. So if you are saying, harumph, they kept Wes Phillips and Matt Daniels, that might not necessarily be true. They still could have kept those guys, and you can harumph when it is confirmed, but it is not, at least as of this recording, it is not confirmed. So all of this remains to be seen. There's a lot of wait and see going on right now, which is not great for the famously impatient fans of a football team. But that's all we can do is sit, wait, and see. I will talk to you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.